what happens when you purify your body, your mind, your spirit. Something miraculous. The body begins to heal itself. Welcome to the Medicine Girl podcast, where each week we explore new ways to heal your body from the root, igniting your inner healer. You are the medicine. And now, here's your host, Robin Stebbins.
Hello and welcome to the Medicine Girl podcast. It's me, your host, Robin Stebbins. Today I am thrilled to have back my favorite guest so far, Dr. Juliette Engel. And last time we went way over time. We're going to stick to an hour. But what we had started talking about last week is, and go back and listen to that episode. That was phenomenal. And we also link back to some of her other episodes on different podcasts where she goes deeper into what happened with the MK Ultra and the programming. But I want to kind of center this conversation on medicine and the medical system. And you had started talking about what your work in Russia and the Angel Coalition and all of that wonderful work that you've done. And I really kind of want to know, your take on what is that medical system like in Russia? How can we I won't say turn around this Western medicine, but create our own without having it eventually wind up like it is today?
Well, it's so interesting. When I first went over to Russia was 1990, and I was practically may have been the first Western medical doctor into their maternity system. So the birthing hospitals, the abortion clinics, which was their only form of birth control at the time, and women in their lives would have up to 11 abortions, and they had virtually no equipment, no sterilizers. Places were filthy. They used cats to control rats inside of hospitals, and it was appalling. Even remembering the smell of those hospitals. They would abort fetuses and just leave them sitting on the windowsill, and just the stink of rotting flesh was something that has stayed with me. So their system had completely collapsed, and the Soviet Union collapsed, and all of their institutions collapsed. And at the time, we had these sparkly, clean hospitals, and we believed 100% in our medical system and had total faith in our institutions. So I was coming over there as that time was the 20th century, to meet the medieval primitives. And I felt that way. I felt like, okay, we have all this stuff. We are advanced. We have everything. And if you don't have the technology, the chemicals, the electricity, the X-rays, incredible computers that we had, you're nothing. You get what the Soviets had, and I couldn't imagine that we would ever be in a similar situation, but we're heading right into it. We are in such a nosedive in the medical profession. And the first thing that happens is that the people lose faith in the medical system. And the medical system starts committing corruption and crimes. And that's what happened in I'm going to say Russia. The whole Soviet Union, but I'm going to say Russia just to for the sake of conversation. Their system was completely corrupt. You had to come in and you came in labor, and if you wanted to get to the front of the line, you paid right there. You had to come with a pocket of cash, and people were so, it was so corrupt. And people that couldn't pay were left outside delivering their babies in the street practically. And this was, I couldn't imagine that degree of corruption. How did it get so bad? How did they get to that point? But I see us doing exactly the same thing. And the interesting thing with alternative medicines and the kinds of things that you do is that as the I don't know whether to call it traditional medicine, but as the Western medicine model, as the sophisticated, we'll call it scientific model of medicine collapsed in Russia, people turned to what they call the traditional medical. We sort of switched the terms, but they call it traditional medicine. And maybe a person saw a doctor once or twice in their lifetime, but they had a healer, and the whole family went to heal. They're still going to healers, and so the local therapists, the healers that had special powers, that's where people went, and that's happening today, and that's happening here. And I don't think, when I myself went through a healing in, I was in Crimea. Shall I tell you that story? So that
I would love to hear that story.
So in 1990, I visited the maternity hospitals in Russia and went through this appalling revelation of how could you survive as a nation and have such appalling healthcare for your infants and children? And they didn't have birth control available for people at that time, so women had to have abortions, and the abortions were non-sterile, without any anesthetic, and women suffered terribly in their souls because of these abortions, because they were killing their children, or they would have the children and a third of them were given away to the orphanage system. So I was beginning to go back and forth and work on this problem, and I'd had a surgery, maybe about 7 years before that, for tumors in my sinus. I had inverting papillomas, which are precancerous tumors, and I'd been told at that time that they might come back. And because I was very young at the time, it was just 40. If they did, they'd be aggressive and they'd probably kill me. And so I went every year and had CT scans and had it followed. And sure enough, after I went to Russia, I came back and started having headaches, went in to see my ENT specialist. He said, they're back. So you've got the tumors. And this time we're going to have to do really radical surgery. And that meant taking out my eye, taking off my nose, digging out the bones of my face. I'd have a prosthetic nose, a prosthetic eye, and how I was being a doctor at the University of Washington. I had every specialist, available seeing me. And I have no recollection of this group of specialists coming and seeing me. I totally blocked it out. All I remembered was baboons. Think about that. I remembered being in a cage of baboons, but that was just my mind trying to make light of this horrible situation of these doctors whom I knew, all of them, telling me I was going to die if I didn't have the surgery. But I knew in my soul, in my very being, that if I had the surgery, I would die. And that I kept debating it in myself. Is this my own fear doing this? Am I deluding myself? Or is this right? And I'm absolutely sure it was right. I went to see someone I'd gone to medical school who did the eye exam on me. And he said, we're going to have to take out this eye. We're going to have to do it or you're going to die. The next day, he died. He died of a massive heart attack, totally unexpected. And of course, that did it. And about that time, the Russian non-traditional doctors who had met in Moscow in 1990, when I first went there, started contacting me and saying, we know you're sick. You need to come and use alternative medicine. We'll take you to the shamans. There was a group of shamans that were going to be coming to the Crimea. And Crimea is very important. There's a lot of reasons why everybody wants to get their hands on Crimea. It's a spiritual center of the world. And so they said, come to Crimea, come spend time to us, and we'll bring these shaman from all over Russia, all the way from Siberia, from the Altai Mountains. And of course, my doctors in Seattle were dead set against it. And at that time, I was taking a lot of steroids just to keep the tumor from pressing on my optic nerves. And I had enough steroids for about 2 weeks, and I took off and went to Russia. Everybody thought I was completely insane, and it has to this day caused problems with my family. But I went and was taken to a compound in the middle of nowhere in a field that was completely surrounded by pink roses. And in Crimea, they grow this very special pink rose that they make wine out of. And it grows everywhere, wild there. It did then. And so I just remember coming to the airport in Simferopol and then driving for like 5 or 6 hours out into the wastes of Crimea. It was desert practically. The only thing growing there were these pink roses. So I spent a week in this compound undergoing the shamanic therapy, which really opened my eyes because I was in an alternate world. Now, I didn't speak Russian at the time, and none of them spoke English. So it forced me to do all of my communication psychically, which I turned out to be pretty good at. But, and I think human beings have a lot of that ability, but if you give up the idea that you're not going to be able to communicate with words. So I had the experience of becoming a tree. I had the experience of having the psychic healer inside my body, inside of a tree. I describe this in my book, Angels Over Moscow, in a lot more detail of what it was like, what these people were like, what the compound was like. It was a different world. What being with all these intense psychic healers was like. And when I came back to Seattle 1 week later, my hair had grown like 3 inches. My eyebrows had grown all over my face. There were no mirrors in the compound, so I hadn't seen myself for 2 weeks. And my mustache, I mean, I looked like Groucho Marx. And had dirty, broken fingernails. So I arrived in the airport. I thought, okay, I'm not going to see anybody I know. I'm just going to get home, take a very good shower. And the first person I walked into was my ENT doctor. He was there picking up somebody else. And he says, Juliette, what happened to you? And so I came in that Monday, had another CT scan, and the tumors were gone. Gone. No trace.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. And they concluded, I thought, wow, they're going to be so interested in this. I mean, how did this happen? You know, the time I left, they had actually signed me out of the hospital against medical advice, made me sign legal papers saying we're not responsible if you die in the next 2 weeks. And I came back and I was fine. But it was so beyond anybody's, ability to process that they never mentioned it. They didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to hear about it. And I realized that I needed to work with all these people. And so I let it go. Also, I was in the process of my own development where I was still trying to remember my childhood because I couldn't remember it. But that was my exposure to the psychic healing, shamanic healing, that there are alternative ways. And this is what the Russians used. That's what they did. And I'm still in contact with some of the psychic healers. The trouble being they're in the middle of the war in Ukraine because they're mostly in Cherkasy and Avdiivka and Crimea. So there is an entirely different way of approaching medicine. And at the time, I let it go because we had something that worked. We had the traditional medicine. We had basically petroleum-based medicine. And I knew that at the time, that all of our textbooks, our pharmacology courses, all this was sponsored by the Rockefeller Foundation. That's what they did.
You knew it at the time?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Oh.
I mean, our textbooks were developed and sponsored by the Rockefeller Foundation. We knew that, but the teaching was that this is the best there is, this is helping people. This is what works. And when I was in medical school, the first Planned Parenthood opened, and it opened in Seattle, but it was called, it was at Group Health, and it was, it developed from there because it's Bill Gates's mother and father, his parents were very close to Margaret Sanger. And so they sponsored the first abortion clinic that was just a straight out abortion clinic right there in Seattle. And as a medical student, I refused to go there or to have anything to do with it. And I thought they would kick me out of medical school for it, but they didn't. But that's where it started. So all this was swirling around me, and all these influences were there. And at the same time, I couldn't remember who I was or where I'd come from. It was a very strange kind of life. But I knew that the traditional medicines that the Russians were using had a lot of merit, had a lot of value. And I took other people there. I brought other people who were interested in the psychic healing. But it was hard to find people who were all that serious about it. It was more like, how do we make a profit from this? Or they're trying to take the Siberian shamanic methods and turn them into something that looks Western, with the clinics, with the medicine and the nice smells, and everything's all smells like jasmine and, much more pleasant environment than what they actually use. Believe me. But it works. So there. And this is what people used for thousands and thousands of years. So as our faith in Western medicine crumbles, which it should, because it's largely a complete and utter fraud, and we're realizing that it's actually making us sicker, and what's happening to children, and all of this is destroying our health. It's not improving our health. Plus, it separates us from nature. Part of what the shamans did, and part of what they taught me, is when you go out to gather plants to make these herbal remedies, and when you're going to harvest the plant, you talk to the plant, and you ask permission to pick it. And if it doesn't give it to you, it's not going to help you. And when the plant is right and there is a conjunction of spirits, it tells you, which sounded a little crazy at first, but then I realized, no, that's absolutely right. And so I do that all the time now. I go out and talk to my plants, and they tell me a great deal about everything, about how they're doing and about whether I can pick them or not. So there's a huge amount to learn. There's a lot of flaws with it too. I mean, it has all the pitfalls of Western medicine. It involves a lot of sexual invasion, and that's part of why people are very reticent about it. I mean, a shaman moves in to your body and takes you over. So if that person is unethical, you can wind up doing all kinds of things that you would never even want to do, so it's an invasion of your body. So you have to be like the plant. You have to know how to put up your boundaries. This is something I learned. And this is something I learned in dealing with Russia in general, is that they have very powerful psychic personas in general. And I think that's because when you grow, I think we'll get that way too, because they grew up in a culture where they couldn't trust anybody. So how do you know if you're going to trust someone? How do you know if you're going to get in their car? How do you know if you're going to agree to anything that you're being tricked or could be tricked or harmed by? It's you read them psychically. So, I mean, I got to where I could get into anybody's car in Russia. You know, they have these gypsy cabs. There's no, at the time, there were no professional taxi cabs. It was just you put your hand out and anybody that thought, you know, you looked okay would pick you up and take you where you wanted to go. But, you know, you had to like look eye to eye and psych each other out because that driver had to like you and you had to like him. Sort of like picking the plants. Yeah. And if I made the decision to get in the car, nothing ever happened to me. I mean, it was a very good system. But so we need to learn from that. And right now, the way it stands, they're becoming more and more westernized. Wow. Even though they've been cut off from Western supplies, but it's still nowhere like we are. So we need to learn from them before they lose their abilities and their own traditions.
Well, I think that's part of this fifth generation warfare, is to eradicate all of the pure heart healers, because I think, you know, some really important things that you said, when you try to monetize anything in this healing realm, I truly believe it cuts off the source of the healing. I don't know why. But I've just seen that over and over and over in my 35 years dealing directly with patients and what works and what doesn't. The other thing, they want to get rid of the healers, the Hawaiians, the Native Americans, those that knew that reverence for the land and would show you how to communicate with the plants. I just grew up in the middle of nowhere, Nevada, and we were not allowed to come in until the bell rang, the little dinner bell. And that was usually, you know, at nightfall. And so I would just wander around by myself, talking to plants, picking little leaves off, chewing them. You just had this harmonious balance. You didn't use the thinking part of the head. And I really liked what you said when you went to Russia. You didn't speak Russian. They didn't speak English. So you had to rely on the intuition. Mm-hmm. And you had to rely on that psychic connection, which is pure. I don't think you can, I mean, it would be very difficult to interrupt that or usurp it, which is what I think they're really trying to do. This whole thing is separate us from our intuition. And
yes. Yeah, absolutely. Because the brain's a liar. The brain will tell you, you know, anything you want to hear because it's your brain. You know, you can force you can lie to yourself through your brain, and emotions are the worst. So it's not emotion either. And it's almost like in American society, we're told we're either evaluating with our brains or our emotions. Well, that's not true. There's the spirit. And but to find your spirit, it's a very true, clear, honest line that runs through us, and that's what we need to be connected to. And the people that lose that are the people that have been through the MK Ultra training, because if you want to make the torture stop, you give up your soul. If you give up your soul, you lose that pure line to your spirit, and then everything that comes out of you is a lie.
And that's, I think, what's taken over. I think a lot of people have given up their souls. I think a lot of people in the medical industry have given up their souls. I want to ask you, my idea was that with, you know, MK Ultra is so fascinating to me because I think they do it to all of us on a grand scale. But I looked at intelligence quotient, IQ. People that had a high IQ, I feel it was more, they were able to control them and indoctrinate them with their agendas, so that, you know, you can give a physician a piece of paper and it says, you know, all, you know, structures the words in ways that make sense to them, the methodology section or the abstract, whatever it is. You can convince these medical professionals of pretty much anything. You can convince them that giving people rat poison is a good thing. If you have the peer-reviewed study and it's out of a prestigious university, they'll believe anything. So they're the most easily controlled part of the population that everyone looks up to, especially the people in the white coats. They're gods to most people. I just talked to a 86-year-old patient on Monday. And she was not on any medications until now. And now she's, her face is bloated out. She's on steroids and they're giving her hormones and all of these, 3 different cardiac blood pressure medications. And we went over her list and I said, here's the things you can ask to have removed. And she started shaking. She was so scared to have to go in and say, I don't think these medications are helping me. I wanted to get off of some of them. Like, that's how entranced these people are with the white coats, which, similarly, Jason Christoph points out is the same coat as the butcher down at the supermarket. But the other thing, too, I wanted just to put an emphasis on is when they separate us from that pure spirit, our soul, then you're operating on this, which is corrupted, the hungry ghost, and it's never enough. There's no healing in that. So the question I have for you is, do you think most of the doctors are aware? I think that my colleagues, the nurses, are aware of what they're doing. I think they turned a blind eye to it and they don't want to know anymore, because if they started researching it, they would know what it is they're doing. But I believe they know these protocols are deadly.
Well, see, I left American medicine in the 1990s and moved into the world of developing Russian medicine, and came back in 2010 and was just appalled. I mean, just shocked. It's like different people. They're like, there's no discussion of medical ethics. You can't talk about your soul to your doctor. Not that you ever really could, but in the 1970s and 80s and up to the mid 90s, when I was practicing medicine, science was becoming more and more the god of society. I mean, it was when Bill Gates came out and Microsoft. I knew him before he even founded Microsoft, because we were all in Seattle, and we're all about the same age. It was this really exciting mix of entrepreneurs and people that were discovering things and starting companies. I mean, I was there for the first opening of Starbucks, and it was just an exciting, the first Costco, it was just an exciting brew. But Microsoft came out with this motto that knowledge is power. And I had this argument with him back then, and this would be the mid 70s. And I said, not really. Wisdom is power. Knowledge is just the ability to, influence or to grab something for yourself. I mean, but wisdom, that's a step beyond knowledge. And it was like, just went over everybody's head, and like, yeah, they're the same. To their minds, it was the same thing. To me, it was completely different. Wisdom is how you use knowledge, how you temper what you know with the pure spirit that's running through you. Now, not everybody has a pure spirit running through them, and that's another. Of course, you have people that are pure evil, and what they have running through them is very influential because it's powerful, but it's not for the good of humanity. And then you get into arguments with people, what's good, what's bad. And in MK Ultra, we were divided into the goats. We were the goats. We were the high IQ descendants of royal lions, the chosen. We were the goats, and everybody else was the sheep. So you had different classes of people in the MK Ultra programs. And the sheep would be sacrificed, the goats would be tortured, but not killed. So I wish somebody had sat me down at some point and explained what was happening in the MK Ultra, but they didn't. I was just a kid and I was in it.
Yeah.
And for me, looking back on it now, I'm trying to go back and evaluate what actually happened. And I'm seeing more and more, but you really have to have an understanding of history because this has gone on for a very long time. And it's interesting. There's a very big reason that the Ukraine and the U.S. and all these power centers want to possess the Ukraine and particularly Crimea. Right? They're not willing to let it go. Crimea was ancient Scythia, and when the tribes of Israel left they went to Scythia largely, and Scythia is completely filled with star forts and pyramids and evidence of, tens of thousands of years of ancient civilizations, and it has a power there that is incredible. That's why the shamans come there to heal. It's why I think a lot of influencers want to build military bases there, and just like the star forts all over the U.S. Very often have a military base smack right dab in the middle of them. It's not like these people don't know that there's power in the star forts. There's so much for us to discover, and it's right under our noses.
Yeah, I don't think it's as difficult to discover as they lead us to believe. And I really believe that, when you're off substance, and we talked last time about caffeine, but you're off alcohol, you're off caffeine, nicotine, marijuana, prescription drugs, any petroleum-based. Now I'm going to add, most supplements because they're all owned by the pharmaceutical giants, and they don't put anything in a pill that doesn't create a downstream customer, in my opinion. But I think that information is accessible through us. Mm-hmm. Through that divine soul, the Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it, we can access that information. It's like God's Wi-Fi. Mm-hmm. And when you're clear and when you're clean, you can pick up that information and start to discern, how to create these little villages that I think we need to create of free energy, access primary water, which is juvenile water formed for the first time. You don't have to filter it because it hasn't come, in contact with chemtrails and fluoride and chlorine and the 5,000 other chemicals that they're spraying on our crops and food systems. But those are the kinds of things that we can start to access with, the pure wisdom. And I agree with you 100% that wisdom, those of us that have that ability to tap into our wisdom and to critically think and creatively think and not be controlled and not be told what to do. They want to weed us out. You're the crazy ones. You're the dumb ones. Whatever it is, they'll label you. You have ADHD. Here's some methamphetamines or defiant behavior disorders. Whatever it is, like get rid of those people. Get them into, places where we can get their heads put down, so that they just have complete control. But we're waking up, and the more they throw at us, it's like the more we wake up. And the more people wake up.
I sure hope that's true.
I sure hope it's true too, Juliette. Some days I feel optimistic and that it is like we are turning a corner, and other days it's not so much. But
at least it doesn't require everyone to go through this process. I mean, you'll have MK Ultra used sheep and goats, and that's true because the goats lead the sheep. So if enough are able to go through it, the rest will come.
Yes, that's a good way to look at it, because you always think, well, why was I so aware of everything from the beginning? Well, there's the reason, and you just continue to connect with that pure center for guidance on the direction that your life is to take. And it's usually, it's not usually, it's never what I think I would like for my pathway to be.
I found that too. It's and that's what Solomon said in Ecclesiastes. Anything that isn't God's idea isn't going to work. So don't even try it. I found that true too. If I'm forcing my will, if it's something I want, it never goes particularly well. But the spirit will wake me up.
Yeah. I just want to, before I forget too, like that's exactly what you just said. That's exactly how we need to form every system from now on, is from that, unfolding from the creator, from God. As that unfolds, that gives us the information. But when we start to create it from here, like you were saying, now they see the success of these shaman. They want to monetize it. They want to put it in a formula and a box and have like these big medical centers here that are just gorgeous walking in, like a luxury spa. Yet behind closed doors, it's corrupted. That when you're functioning on this, it will always lead to corruption because it's your ideas. That's the small self. That's the one that wants to be seen and adored and approved and appreciated. Whereas the divine self, you don't need your name on anything.
Yes, it's not about money. And the shamans are corruptible. I mean, it's as corruptible as anyone else. I mean, I've seen that happening.
Same.
And was responsible for some of that because I brought people over to have the experience who immediately saw the monetary value of it. The real shamans don't take any money. They'll accept food, they accept clothes, donations, that kind of thing. But it's not about the money. But science had to replace God, or we're not controllable. So that's what's been happening. So the belief in science, if you can prove it in a double-blind study, then God has no place in this. This is the truth.
Yeah.
But it's not true. So there's the brain, the science brain is the liar.
That's what I have noticed, especially when I'm sitting with my patients and we're clients and we're just troubleshooting the root causes of the problems. And then when we get to it and it's really simple, it's always these simple things, they're eating breakfast cereal and drinking Bud Light or something like that. And then the emotional roots. But when they start, then they go back to the doctor and it's almost like they get all these spells cast on them. And they say, no, it is that complicated, like with your sinus tumors. You could have spent the rest of your life just up in here going and doing different tests and having these experts give their opinions. And it gets so confusing. You start to believe it. It's like, oh, well, this is too confusing for me to understand. They must be correct. So I have to trust them.
The way people were coerced into taking the deadly death jab, even with all the information out there, it was accessible to everyone, all the warning signs. But the authority figure said take it, and that's why those people will always be sheep.
Yeah,
and that's that's the greatest sadness. I mean, that MK Ultra was right in that there will always be sheep, there will always be goats, and you just got to have goats that are, good shepherds to the sheep, or maybe sheepdogs, maybe border collies, not sheeps and goats, but sheep and border collies that protect the sheep.
Yes, protect the sheep, and I think for me it's cleansing out these heavy metals and these drugs and these jabs, and from birth they got to get them from as a neonate. You're
unbelievable.
Tried to force me to get the flu shot, and I've never gotten a flu shot. And it's like, well, how do you know what that's going to affect? That's going to have on an unborn baby. So I said no, and every single time I had to go in, and I didn't know about ultrasounds then. They're not ultrasounds; it's radiation. It's it's that trauma from the beginning. We got to inject them from the beginning. But I say, if we could just get all of that stuff out of their system, then who are we talking to? We don't even know who we're talking to right now.
No, since you can, using EMF and all kinds of transmitted frequencies, you can create, you can create frequencies using the graphene dioxide and the other chemicals that have been injected, and people can be influenced in all kinds of ways.
Can you speak a little bit more about that? Because I started researching that with I kept thinking, everyone's talking about the graphene, or they're talking about snake venom or snail venom, but I always look at, okay, why? Why do they want to get us all on that? Because it's usually a soft kill. They want to monetize us as much as possible. But can you speak to what, as far as what's in them, and what?
Well, the goal, ever since I was a little kid in MK Ultra, was depopulation.
Okay.
It was to reduce the number of people in the world to, what do the Georgia Guidestones say?
Yeah,
reduce
500 million.
500 million, no more. And areas like, you look at the families who are like, there's a family called the Bukle family, and they are the wealthiest family in the UK. They have more land, more money, more art, more castles than the royal family, but nobody ever hears about them. It's Buccleuch, Bucceluch, and their requirement, if you're going to live on any of their land, I think it's one person per 4 square miles and no more. I'm not entirely sure. For a little while, one of their teenagers had a website up and had put all this up. And then I think the adults discovered it in horror and took it all down. But I did see it. And I was interested in them because I descend from that family, or were related to that family. Yeah. So there was a very brief glimpse into the people that have the most money and the most power and the most influence, the most land in the world, and how they look at it. And they don't want other people on the land. So you can work for them, but not on their land.
Oh, I see.
So I think this has been going on for quite a while. They look at everyone else as servants and slaves, and maybe they are. I mean, that's from their point of view. How free are we ever?
That's what I have noted in my deep understanding of this, is they've reset this countless times. This has been happening for countless numbers of years. Like we've always been one world government. And then, the little tracts of people will escape and have reverence for the land, and the pure hearts will be pure hearts and know how to heal and want the best for humanity. And then it goes to another reset once we all start waking up the other people, because they're able to start seeing it. You got to do another reset.
I think that's true. The cyclical nature of everything rises and falls. I mean, now you look at Russia, and Russia has a better medical system than we do.
Yes.
So that was a total turnaround and flip over 30 years. And Russians, you talk to them now, they don't even remember how awful it was until I start talking about it. They go, oh yeah, it did smell really bad in there. But, our hospitals it's all degrading. And I think, like you say, it cycles. So I think it has to fall in order to reset and rise again. But what determines the future is how those little groups, like us talking together, are going to influence the future, because I know the influence that people like myself and others that got involved with the best of intentions going into Russia had a tremendous influence on how it turned out and how it is today. So we just came in, we were just sort of called in by God at the right moment, at the right time to seed the right things, and they took it and ran with it. It could have gone the other way, it could have gotten worse.
Right. Yeah. And I think too, it's that sometimes it has to get messy and ugly and decay for the healthy, similar to the mycelium network under the soil. It's a vast network like our nervous system, and yeah, sometimes pollutants and all these other things have to fall in there and create this goo that then these other organisms know how to clean it up.
Yeah, and we fight it because we want to live.
Yeah.
So we don't see that. We won't live to see that.
Yeah.
We are part of the cyclical nature of all of this.
Then that's more, what we were talking about before. Like if you are able to not have your name on it and really just say, my life is devoted to bringing in the light and protecting the children so that we don't keep going through this again and again and again. I think what I'm so charged up about is that they want to interface us with artificial intelligence. I think the graphene is part of it. They want to brain chip us, and so that there will never have to be another reset. They'll be able to have complete control over procreation and every aspect of our life will be surveilled and married with this surveillance system and artificial intelligence.
Yes, and I think to that we have to say no.
And I think wake people up to what that looks like, because what they have with the children, they gave us these Trojan horses, these phones, these tablets, and they're already interfacing with them. So it's not that big of a deal to say, do you want to go into this red goo, hook yourself up to the matrix, and you can be in this world 24/7. I'm hoping, and working with my son and his friends that are 16 and 15 to say, let's go outside, let's go camping, let's see how beautiful this world is, how connecting with nature can be so much more satisfying to the soul than, flying around in a fake virtual reality.
Yeah, and AI is garbage in, garbage out. It's like Wikipedia.
Yes.
You get the same garbage in, garbage out that somebody put in as garbage. And Wikipedia is very restricted. So if AI is getting all of its knowledge from sources like that, it's just garbage.
It's all garbage. And a lot of people have been telling me to write using AI.
No.
And that's such a slippery slope. I don't think they realize, what is the point of reading a robot's words? You're taking out the humanity. You're taking out the soul.
That's the point. You all become part of the garbage out.
Yes. So you're just and that's kind of what I had thought of too. Why make an army of robots? That takes a lot of work and money. Just turn the human into the robot.
Well, that's the plan.
Yeah. I always want to be wrong. I'm just looking to be wrong. Okay, maybe I'm just crazy, but I know I'm not. I know in my heart I'm not, and I know that's why I'm doing every single possible thing I can to be in service of the light, to speak my truth, but not martyr myself. Be very cautious about what I say, but at least just tell people there's a question to ask, there's a choice to make.
What a beautiful mantra. I mean, you should put that on greeting cards. I mean, they're sort of like the desiderata, for the modern day. What can you do? You just said it right there beautifully.
Well, thank you. And I know we are out of time. So what I always like to end with solutions. What's something someone can do today that, let's say they're in the system, they're in the medical system, they've got diagnoses and prescriptions. What can they do today to start extricating themselves from that system and going into a more healthy, lit up, connected way?
Like you said, go out and be with nature.
Yeah.
Go swim in the water. Go swim in the ocean. Go hike somewhere where there aren't chemtrails.
Yeah.
Go to Siberia. As soon as Russia opens up again, I'm going to be taking people to Crimea and Siberia, because it does alter your perspectives. Just to be in an environment that isn't so we're not so familiar with, we're not so comfortable in. Everybody has to go out of their comfort zone, where they have to think differently, and go out and dig in your garden, grow plants, talk to your plants. These are all things that are important to do, but you don't have to do all of it. You don't have to do everything. Turn off the television. That's the big one.
That would be the main thing. Turn it off and unplug it.
Yeah, because we're getting massive subliminal information coming from the television, which is garbage. All garbage.
Garbage, low vibration, garbage, low frequency, meant to keep you sick, weak, dependent, separate from your soul, separate from your intuition, separate from empathy and compassion and those things that make us human.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much, Juliette. You are just the most purest, wonderful light that I've connected with. And I just feel like your voice and your wisdom is so needed right now. So thank you for sharing this. Where can people find you, and how can they support your work? Well,
if you just look up my website, it's Juliette Engel. I think it shows on the screen there, doesn't it?
Yes.
It's JulietteEngel.com. So,
and the link will be right down there.
Yes, and you can see my books, you can read my books, and interact with me that way. And I'm sure that you and I will keep talking.
We'll keep talking, because I don't know how this time goes so fast when we're talking, but what I really wanted to talk to you about too is just herbal medicine and use, the plants as medicine, and not getting so structured in the herbalist mentality of like being really specific, but just getting that relationship with the plants and your garden and using that as medicine. And I think we need to ignite that inner healer within each of us, and not, always have to subjugate our power to anyone in a white coat, whether it's a shaman or an herbalist or any kind of healer. It's like we are our own healers, and you are medicine. Yeah, we are our own healers. And yes, never give up your power. After I went to Russia, I never wore a white coat again. I like that. Yeah. I'm really toying with just I'm in such I keep getting the message from God to stay where I am, going into people's houses and educating them. It's exhausting because I'm up against such programming and
it's wonderful what you're doing. Absolutely wonderful. So that's what works. The human to human.
Yes. And to see I'm not a threat. I'm not what they've heard on the TV, the tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist. I'm just a woman wanting the best for them. And so I think that's it. We just continue to connect with each other, speak to everyone you know, kindly, compassionately, with love in your heart. And if you're triggered, you take a breath and come back to when you're able to speak to people, because I think we have to, it's go time. It's go time. It's go now or don't go at all. Yeah. Yeah.
And unfortunately, I have to leave.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Juliette Engel. I appreciate you, love you, and we will chat soon.